this is interesting. It's already starting to happen in some, media sites, not to an extremely popular degree. But with The Birth of a Nation coming out, which the reviews are like, it's interesting. It's impossible to know at this point if the slightly tepid reviews of Birth of a Nation are the result of the controversy or if they're genuine.
Yeah.
I don't know, because everyone was raving about it 9 months ago. But it also has brought to light a lot of interest in the original. This isn't a remake. It just has the same title for a very kind of ironic purpose. It has the same title. It's kind of an inside thing. But people are investigating the original too in the media and how controversial that was and divisive. And then you have a couple of articles that I've read just in the past week about Griffith's follow-up, Intolerance, which many viewed as an apology for Birth of a Nation, since Birth of a Nation kind of glamorized the KKK. And Intolerance is known as one of the greatest movies ever made. I wanted to know what you guys think about the legacy of the original Birth of a Nation and the follow-up of Intolerance and how those place in film culture today, because that's probably the first example of a film that had greatness in it, Birth of a Nation, and yet something that you would feel really uncomfortable with supporting.
Well, I mean, it's like how I feel about Trying for the Will. I mean, technically, they are breathtaking in their scope and everything. Technically, I mean, if we can say that, technically these films are amazing. Yes, the subject matter is deplorable, pun intended there. But you must remember when that premiered, Woodrow Wilson said it was the greatest thing he'd ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember, you have to take that into its own context. At the time the movie comes out, there are high, very influential people who thought it was a masterpiece. Now we look at that from today's eyes, and we certainly find it repugnant. But we do have to remember at the time Dean, correct? Help me out here. There was nothing like that ever made.
Well, I mean, Griffith kind of invented. I won't even say kind of. He invented film language. A lot of the things that we know from film, which is whether it be like fade outs or dissolves or numerous things. The irises and so forth. A lot of that stuff is invented by him and is invented in. Probably movies earlier than Birth of a Nation, but certainly Birth of a Nation, which was a massive hit. I mean, if probably, Birth of a Nation doesn't get figured into the adjusted for inflation list of the biggest hits of all time. But if it were, it would be pretty high on the list, I think, because anyway, it made millions of dollars when movies cost literally a cent to get in.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, a repugnant story released during a time where the KKK was absolutely huge in the country, and was probably viewed a little differently than it is now.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree that Intolerance is a better movie.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's better simply because it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable watching it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also just a better, bigger scoped movie. So, I mean, you have to, the Griffith Birth of a Nation, you have to give it its credit.
Yeah.
It's just a fact.
Yeah, I mean, just a side note here. There's a interesting movie that I have, Good Morning Babylon, with Charles Dance as D.W. Griffith. That's an interesting, actually worthwhile movie if anyone's interested.
I think by the Paglioli brothers from Italy about Italian artisans, two brothers, Italian artisans that came over to work on the massive sets for Intolerance.
Yeah,
which I think those sets still exist somewhere, like out in the desert or something.
I think you're right.
That would be amazing.
I think they're still out there.
Well, then here's this. So, The New Birth of a Nation, about a true story of a slave revolt, where led by Nat Turner,
right,
started offing the white slave owners and their wives and their children. And I think something like 80 some odd. You know what was fascinating? I got to say this as an aside. I was watching 60 Minutes last week, and they had an interview with Nate Parker, the writer, director, star of it, which was fine. But the really fascinating part of it was an extra that was only available on their website, which was an interview with an African American scholar.
Oh.
And he was close friends with a descendant of one of the slave owners killed by Nat Turner.
Okay.
And they're close friends. A white man, a black man, one a descendant of someone that was killed by Nat Turner, the other who heralds Turner as a hero. And it was a really interesting segment. So anyone out there, I mean, that was a beautiful segment. You need to check that out. And they both have very different views on Turner's legacy and whether or not he should be even be hailed as a hero. And it came down to, well, he killed infants. I mean, they killed children, which wasn't really, but they wanted to kind of off the whole family of the breed of hate, I guess was the thinking behind it. Anyway, so with all that in mind, it's based on a true story, and yet the inciting incident is made up. And that inciting incident is a rape.
Oh,
awkward.
That's not true.
Awkward.
Then.
Yeah, that's apparently that's not true. But I mean, in the movie, what we see is we don't see a rape scene. We see her in the aftermath.
Right.
And it's not made clear that it was really a rape. But it's obviously a beating because she's quite torn up afterwards.
Yeah.
But so it's not quite. You just have to assume whatever you're going to assume. But
I watched it today. I mean, I went to go see it this afternoon. And going into this, the things I had read online the last week, not so much reviews, but like how not to do an apology tour was one of them. An article, no, seriously. And then another thing was supposedly a historian just says the movie is an epic failure. Several historians have come out and said this. Now, I only remember this from high school history. I don't know the specifics of it. I will say it is a beautifully made movie.
It is.
I have to say, I'm still fresh out of it, so I don't really have a strong opinion one way or another. I was intrigued the whole time. I was never bored. I was fascinated. And I just want to touch on just something, even though I think it's important to see this movie, as many movies as you can on the big screen, just to appreciate the cinematography, because I can no longer appreciate it on the small screen. I've noticed I really have to go to the movies for the most part to appreciate the scope and everything, the way it's shot and everything. Because granted, in terms of obviously the TVs we have now, especially HD flat screens, you can get a better feeling. But I really do appreciate going to see these on the big screen. I think it's a much better way.
Yeah. Well, here's my take on it. Okay, I agree that it's a beautifully shot movie. The widescreen cinematography by Elliot Davis is terrific. It's got a terrific score by Henry Jackman, and I liked the movie. I was in the middle of the movie and realized, or maybe like right after I got out of the movie, because I was a tiny bit underwhelmed by it because I didn't feel like any of the performances including Nate Parker's, who I thought was a little overacty a little bit. But I didn't feel like any of the performances really connected. And I also felt like the screenplay, I liked the construction of the movie, but I started realizing that the movie was so well directed and well shot that, and also we kind of are familiar with the story generally. It's just basically a story of revenge, on a massive scale. But I was sort of realizing that it was a movie that you could easily watch without the sound on. And not miss anything. Like, it was just like, I know Nate Parker's words are important, but they're largely, biblical words. I did enjoy that one scene with him and the pastor, the Mark Boone Jr., the Reverend, throwing quotes back and forth. Mark Boone Jr.'s being pro-slavery and Nate Parker's being pro-compassion. And so but other than that, and some of Nate Parker's scenes where he's preaching to the slaves. Generally, I felt like it was a movie that was just completely run by images. Also, I thought it was an incredibly well-edited movie. I mean, this movie never bores you.
That's what I was afraid it would do. That's what I was afraid it was due. And what I was amazed at is never at a time was I ever, wandering off into space. I was glued. I wanted to know what was happening. But you bring up a very, very good point about, you could watch it without sound. And I want to, something along the same lines. I think it's an intelligently written script in the sense that he is taking a leap of faith, assuming the audience is going to really follow, because it's not nothing, how do I say it? A lot of the main action in the film is shown visually. It's not done through dialogue at all, I don't think. I mean, he's taking, I think, a very big leap of faith in implying and assuming that we know things, in some, and especially in the second half of the film, because you're wondering what exactly is some of the motives for some of the characters, and I don't think it's ever spoken. It's never spoken. It's all done visually. Nothing is done where, sometimes, a lot of times in movies or any kind of TV or whatever, you will have the character say their motivation or say what you don't get any of that here. This is a pure visual, in that sense, story. There's not a lot of narrative in that sense, talking in that regard. Am I wrong in that? Or
no, I mean, for me, it's a movie that, I feel like it's a movie, first of all, that's done by a person that's watched a lot of movies. And so some of the stuff feels a little derivative. There's a little Gangs of New York in there, and in the major fight scene in the last part of the movie. It's impossible not to think of 12 Years a Slave while you're watching it, which I don't think that this is nearly as good a movie as 12 Years a Slave was.
No, it's not. Not at
all. So it's kind of it's a relatively simple story, and the brutality is there in the film, the brutality towards the slaves, and you get that same feeling too at the end of that I got at the end of 12 Years a Slave, where I was like, it was not only a terrible time for slaves, but it was a time that made slave owners into absolute monsters. If you're going to take what the movies, which both of these movies are based on memoirs, and
true.
And so there has to be a little bit of truth to them, even if you disbelieve some of it. But I bet they put down a lot of the brutality, although we don't see the killing of an infant in it.
I was going to say, I didn't see that at all.
or any of the kids or anything like that. It's what was interesting is that the Armie Hammer character, who's basically Nat Turner's owner, they set up where they had a friendship as kids. He and Nat Turner, but once they grew up, that was completely over with for the most part. I just thought that was interesting. They didn't really the characters never refer back to it or anything like that. It's which I thought was good. I thought it was kind of clever how they just said, well, times have changed and we've changed and this is where we are now. And I thought it was good that they didn't, talk about when they were kids and all that kind of stuff. That could have gone south. I wish that some of the supporting players, particularly Asia Naomi King as Nat Turner's wife, who I thought was good in the few scenes that she has, but she's not in the movie very much. I wish that more of the supporting performances would have had more meat on the bones, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Jackie Earle Haley.
Because the 12 Years a Slave supporting performances did.
Yes.
I mean, they were lauded,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, Jackie Earle Haley, Mark Boone Jr., always glad to see those guys. Penelope Ann Miller, and Dwight Henry's in it, who was great in Beasts of the Southern Wild. But,
there are a lot of great performances. I'm looking through right now.
Yeah,
I didn't recognize Armie Hammer at first. I won't lie to you, I didn't recognize.
Yeah, because he's got the beard. And then I did like Roger Guinevere Smith as sort of the Turner family's house butler, kind of the Samuel L. Jackson, if you remember in Django and
Django,
King.
yeah.
He's sort of that character for this story. But I thought he was good. But
do you think that Armie Hammer brushes his teeth with Arm & Hammer?
I bet he does. I bet he does. Well, he's related, right? He's related.
I don't know, but
Arm.
every damn time, I think of that actor. I think of putting the Arm & Hammer in the fridge to keep everything fresh or something. That's what I think of when I think of him.
He's independently. I'm sure he's independently wealthy. Doesn't need to. So he joins the club of like Edward Norton and Balthazar Getty.
And Rooney Mara.
Oh, Rooney Mara, and also Julia Louis-Dreyfus as like incredibly rich people that don't have to be acting at all.
Don't have to wait by the phone.
Yes, they're not.
You know what? I never even thought about Balthazar Getty. I never even thought of him being a member of that family.
Yeah, well, he is. He's J. Paul Getty's great grandson or something. So, I liked Birth of a Nation. I didn't think it was the greatest movie of the year, but there were a lot of things I liked about it, and I don't know. It's a tough movie. It's a very tough movie.
I'm just looking at the IMDb page at the aggregate rating. 5.4.
Now, I'm sure that has something to do with the controversy.
Yes.
It has to. I mean, I wouldn't even. I'm not nothing close to that at all. And a lot of people comparing it to Free State of Jones. I think is a far superior movie to that. I mean.
Yeah, which I still haven't seen Free State of Jones, but. Yeah, I mean,
but you're looking at the IMDb rating, which most of them haven't even seen it. Haven't even seen the movie.
Exactly.
That's
you
true.
can go
I
on
think
and
you're
you can
absolutely
just
right there. I mean,
you can go on there and
look
vote
at
as
Rotten
many times
Tomatoes.
as you want. Yeah.
Right. I don't know what it is on Rotten Tomatoes. I'd be interested to see what that aggregate score is on there. But I've never. Has there been another example of a movie that's fallen so far in stature so quickly because of PR?
I can't think of one.
I can't think of anything like this. I mean, it's 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, which makes a lot more sense.
That's not bad. I mean, you know, that's about fair. I would say. I mean, you know, I would give it a little higher, like 84 or something. But
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I mean, you know, I loved how it was directed. I just wish that there was more to it. I guess I don't know. But it's certainly a you know, it's a striking story, and as far as like
here's
how
a question. If you take it apart from the controversy, if you were to watch this as a first directorial effort, would you say this is an arrival of a major new talent?
I would say a very promising talent. Yes, very promising.
And that's dead. And that's dead now, right?
Well, I don't know. He'll probably find some support. I think he'll find, the further I get away from all of this, and I think he'll bounce back. And you know what I would really like to see? I'd just like to see. I was thinking this while I was watching the film too, and I know that this part of the Black experience is, of course, absolutely important, informative, and so forth. And I feel the same way, you know, about the 60s, the 50s and 60s fight for civil rights and everything. But again, I would like to say, I'd like to see more different kinds of stories about the Black experience, and I mean, happily, I think we're getting some with things like Fences and Moonlight and you know, Hidden Figures and so forth. So I think we're getting more because
that would be good. It would be good to have something other than slavery or a raunchy singles dating movie.
Really, right, exactly.
The Black experience has been limited to those kind of two genres. And by the same token, it would be nice to see films that about the Jewish community that aren't all about the Holocaust.
Yes,
you know,
I think you see more of those. You see a lot more of those.
Yeah.
Than you do the other. I mean, you definitely see a lot more of those. I think.
But the only ones known for their Oscar caliber quality are the films that deal with slavery or the Holocaust.
Right.
There has to be like some other.
There has the world that we live in, but there's so much beyond that, though. There's a lot beyond that, actually, but those are the ones, unfortunately, that get the Oscar nominations, the Oscar buzz. I mean, those are the ones. I mean, how should we? You know, when people are pushing for a movie like The Butler, you know, it's not good. I mean, there are far better films. But I don't know what it is, but they're just people pushing for films like that. They're okay, but they're certainly not Oscar or not what we think of.
Everything has to be a history lesson, but things you know, when it comes to the Oscars or whatever. But it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, you know, let's just do. Where is the? I'm waiting for a. And some people might say that, you know, Anna DuVernay. I never saw Middle of Nowhere, her movie previous to Selma, because it was hard to find. But I'd like to see somebody in the Black community come up and be like the Kenneth Lonergan of that community. You know, that's sort of a, you know, I mean. I thought South Side with You as sort of a history lesson in itself was actually that kind of movie, though, kind of like just a character study about, you know, I mean, I just want to see more of that.
Well, we have seen it. It's just that it doesn't get with Daughters of the Dust, To Sleep with Anger.
Yeah.
We do, and look, Spike Lee. Let's not forget Spike Lee.
I know Spike.
And he gets ignored.
I mean, well, the problem with Spike Lee is that he's hit and miss. Like he's He's not reliable. If Spike Lee were a restaurant, half the time you'd be sending your plates back. So
wow, man, or you'd have violent diarrhea. But I mean,